The words and teachings of Jesus have a wisdom, a profundity beyond all human understanding. Even what appears such a simple command can speak to the heart beyond all human wisdom. But of course can be applied to the lives even of children. Children can gain and understand these teachings at a certain level, and yet their wisdom, their profundity reveals itself the deeper we enter Christ. St. Gregory Palamas teaches us that Christ's commandments can only be understood from the context of God cleansing his creation from the disfigurement of sin. This is the way that we must perceive Christ's commandments. They are given to us to heal us from this disfigurement that we've caused ourselves. God, of course, created man beautiful, and his laws are this instrument which he offers to remake us. The commands of Christ are the instruments through which God offers to remake us. In the 6th chapter of the Gospel according to St. Luke, we read the commandment that probably demonstrates this more than any other. Jesus says to us, "As ye would men do unto you, do also to them likewise." First, St. Gregory Palamas says, this commandment sums up nearly all the virtues, all the goodness that we're called to. Which of course is why when we read that commandment in the Gospel according to St. Matthew, we also see the words added, "For this is the law and the prophets." Jesus tells us this is the law and the prophets. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This simple command that gathers all the righteousness found in the old law. But St. Gregory Palamas says it reveals something very profound also about human beings. It demonstrates that all righteousness, all goodness is innate in man as God has made him. The virtues, the goodness that God calls us to is innate in that nature that God created us with. God has placed his goodness in his creature. As St. James says in his epistle, it is the implanted word that saves our soul. The implanted word that saves our soul. And of course, as God in the Old Testament promised Jeremiah, he said, "I will make a new covenant with them. I will put my law in their mind." For those who have entered Christ's body through baptism and chrismation, it's a call to exercise our will based on judgment. St. Gregory Palamas writes that all the gospel precepts are inscribed within us. Everything that Christ commands us to do is inscribed in our hearts. And Christ is calling us to order our lives according to that which God has placed within us. In his love, God has written into our very nature how we should treat each other. It is written mysteriously into the depths of this beautiful nature that God created us with. We naturally know, of course, when someone mistreats us, when they abuse us and so on. We don't need to ponder for any great length of time to reach a conclusion about how it feels and how it affects us. The impact is immediate. We recognize when we are abused. But how numb we have made ourselves to the harm that we inflict on other people. In our anger, in our impatience. How easily we can ignore the impact of our behavior on other people, to truly be numb to what we're doing to other people. And in this simple command, do unto others as ye would have them do unto you, Christ is calling us to wake from our spiritual slumber. He's calling us to begin to feel as instantly and as naturally the pain we cause others, that we feel when we're mistreated, to be alive to the impact of our behaviour on those around us. And more than this, of course, Jesus is commanding us to do all those good things that we would hope someone would do for us. He's taking that old Jewish negative precept of don't treat others the way you don't want them to treat you, and turning it into a positive act, a call to behave in a certain way, to go beyond the negative. We must be the first to forgive. We must avoid judging others. We must see ourselves in our neighbour and feel the hurt that our actions and our words can cause other people. It's a natural impulse, of course, to want to be loved. All human beings have this natural instinct, this desire to be loved. And when we fail to love, we are acting against the nature God gave us when we fail to give that love to other people whose hearts long to be loved. Every word of anger or judgment we speak against others ultimately defaces the beauty of our natural condition, the true natural condition that God created us with. Because we are created in God's image, and though we are fallen, though we are corrupted by our sin, the love within us, though it's diminished, it is never extinguished. God's love is never extinguished. A judgment. Those who have struggled to live according to their true nature will be able to welcome God as he appears for judgment. But if we live in rejection of God's beauty, of God's goodness, then on Judgment Day we will be condemned as those who have made themselves both enemies of our fellow men and of God, of the goodness of God. So, in this life we must focus on the goodness and the generosity of God towards us, of everything he continues to give despite our evil response to his goodness, despite our evil response to his generosity to us. Think of how God continues to love, continues to give in the face of our hostility, of our sin, of our turning away from him continuously. So we must imitate God's goodness, his goodness to us. We mustn't count people's failings and judge them. We must show love, always love. Treat others as we would them treat us. God gave himself for those who could give nothing in return. What can we give God? And yet God gives and gives. And we are unable to give anything to him, truly, for he is in need of nothing. And yet he welcomes our worship. He doesn't need our worship. He doesn't need us. And yet he welcomes everything that we offer to him in sacrifice. Our worship, our repentance, our love, our desire for his forgiveness. God gives himself, his very self, when we can give him nothing in return. We are sinners. He gives himself to sinners. And this is the love we must show each other, not because someone earned it, not because we judge people worthy of our love, of our consideration, not because people have first treated us well, but because we choose the divine image over the fallen men that we have become.